Edgar Allan Poe was an American poet and editor and literary critic. He is known for his poetry and short stories, particularly those involving mysteries and macabre. He is known as one of the central figures of Romanticism and Gothic fiction in the US and of the early American literature. He is one of the first practitioners of the short story and is considered to be one of the pioneers of detective fiction genre. He was born in Boston, and he was the second child of actors David and Elizabeth Poe. He then enlisted in the United States Army, but then he didn't manage to complete his training. He also indulged in gambling, after which he was denied further money by his adopted father. One of his earliest poems that he wrote was The Raven, and this is considered one of his most famous works. Today, I shall be reading out his most famous poem that is known as The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books of keys of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the ancients named Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, that is it and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this and nothing more. Back into the chamber, turning all my soul within me, burning. Soon again I heard the tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what threat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter as there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stepped nor stayed he, but with the mien of order of lord or lady perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and saven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvel this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For when we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above this chamber door, bird or beast upon the sepulchred bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never and nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of war, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the foal whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining with my head at ease, reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God had lent thee, by these angels he had sent thee, respite, respite the nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff or quaff this kind nepenthe, or forget this lost Lenore, quoth the raven nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet undaunted, in this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore, quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by that heaven that binds above us, by the God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if with the distant Aiden it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, quoth the raven nevermore. Be that word a sign of parting, bird of fiend, I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that life so thy soul shalt spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak out from my heart and take thy form off from my door, quoth the raven nevermore. And then the raven never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that's dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming through his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating in the floor shall be lifted nevermore.